Hey guys, I'm Josh. Thanks for checking out my video. I wanted to share a few things here in hopes that maybe some other beginner or intermediate skill level luthier builders could benefit from this. The problem I ran into here, I milled out my neck, glued on my headplate cover, the rosewood headplate cover you see there, and that fretboard was already at final dimension once I installed it. The issue was my nut slot from the edge of the fretboard to the front of the head plate measured about 4 millimeters, and I wanted 5 millimeters. I'm sure you could come up with, 100 different ways to get this done, but the major concerns should be, first of all, do not take any material off of the edge of your fretboard. If you are like most build processes, you're installing your fretboard when it's at final dimension. You can't touch the end of that thing. The other concern, a pretty major concern, is just you don't want to create any gaps around the nut, whether it's on the front, the back, or on the bottom side. If you're going to use a file to kind of chew that headplate cover away, make sure your file has a good safe edge, as in it's good and square at the bottom. You don't want part of that safe edge that's protruding above where the that safe edge plane is, because what'll happen is as you start to work that against the end of the headplate cover, you'll actually create a little trough in the back corner of the nut, and you will see it under the nut as a gap once you install your nut. Let me also point out, with this situation, it was hard to use the file since my nut slot was already very, very tight. I ran the risk of, damaging the end of the fretboard by using a file, so I opted to not use a file for this situation. In case anybody is wondering, the tape I'm using there is my, protective tape on the end of the fretboard, the end of the head plate. That's just a low-tack tape made by Stu Mac. It's cheap, and it doesn't damage a finish. It pulls up really easily, and I just like it kind of as an insurance. What I did do, I used a 12-inch rule, or a 12-inch ruler made by Starret, I don't know how to say it. The one I have, it's actually very thick, and it doesn't flex very easily, so I felt pretty good about it, maintaining its flatness. And I took some adhesive back sandpaper and I stuck it to it. Then I took a razor blade to the bottom and cut it off flush with the bottom so I would have a safe edge and I could get down in the bottom corner of the nut slot up against the headplate cover as far as I could. Something else I really liked about the ruler was that it was very easy visually to see that it was vertical and that I was square to the other side. No matter what method you come up with here, you really need some way to keep the end of that headplate cover parallel with the end of the fretboard. And what I was using here is a gauge block that is parallel along all of its surfaces, well under 1/1000th of an inch. I can't remember exactly what these are guaranteed to be at. When I checked them with the tools I had, that they were pretty flat. Here's a terrible shot of me using the ruler with the sandpaper, the adhesive back sandpaper attached to it. Of course, I'm blocking the shot with my arm. Apologies for that. Pretty new video editor. I'm also using the gauge block to check my progress to make sure I'm not coming offline and staying parallel to the end of the fretboard. I started this process with 150 grit, and after I removed the bulk of the material that I was going for, I pulled that off and switched it to 220. Again, I was making sure I was keeping that bottom edge of that sandpaper as flush with the bottom of the ruler as possible. The main concern was that I didn't want any overhang. This method worked like a charm for me. The issue I ran into first was that as I was fitting the nut, everything was fitting in nice and perfect. Everything was parallel, flat, but my nut would not sit down all the way in the nut slot. I could see a small gap under it. So I had to get into that inside corner with a chisel and recess some of that out. Not on the very outer edges. You have to be real careful there because you don't want that. You don't want to create any gaps that are going to be visible when you present the finished product. But right in from the edge, I've used an 1/8 inch chisel, and I was able to recess that inside corner up against the head plate and get that nut to sit all the way down. I was taking great care to stay away from the top side of that head plate. I was coming down about halfway and working from halfway from the top down to the bottom as I ran the chisel in there one way. Then as I laid the chisel down flat in the slot, I was working away just on the bottom section, but I was focusing most of my effort to that inside corner. And after I did that, that's whenever the nut was able to sit all the way down and had no gaps on the sides, no gaps on the top side, on the front or the back, and everything really looked good. So here you have it, the end result. It looks good from the front, the back, the sides, even on the bottom, no gaps. I'm real happy with the fit. For anybody who watched my video, if you're working on something similar, or if you've come up with a creative way to solve this problem on your own project, please feel free to share that in the comments. I'll be sure to respond. Thanks for watching.